Hey, what is up, everyone, and welcome to Thursday's edition of our Mystic Road Trip. That's right, it's Thursday. That means we're covering tarot today, and this is our Mystic Road Trip. This is a podcast where I take you on my Mystic Road Trip with me as I try to learn as much as I possibly can about the things that are interesting and see the things that really feel authentically me and build a path that really aligns with my core purpose. And hopefully along the way, some of the things I learned can help you do the same. That's kind of what I'm doing. And who the fuck am I? I am Kim. I am your host. I am a tarot reader, astrologer, spiritual wellness coach, a meditation guide, a holistic dietitian, and just basically a weirdo and lover of everything woo-woo. That's me. That's me. And if that sounds like you, welcome. You've made a friend. I deliver 2 podcasts a week. The first one is on Monday. Usually that's a magical episode or spiritual or mystical. And Thursdays, as I said, are related to tarot. I take 1 tarot card a week and we deep dive into it. Right now we are in the Suit of Swords. We are almost done with the Suit of Swords. And then we'll be heading to a new suit, which I'm not sure which one. It's either going to be Cups or Wands. We'll have to figure it out when I go. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. But before we do that, let's do some housekeeping and shameless plugging, shall we? If you want to reach out to me, you can do that through my social. I have Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. If you don't do socials, I also have an email, because I know there's some people out there that haven't got sucked into that void yet, or may never. Here's hoping. If you want to support the podcast, like, comment, share, follow, subscribe, do all those good things. The more you interact with the video or the audio, depending on the platform you are listening or watching me on, the more you engage with it, the more the algorithms of those platforms, i.e. YouTube and Spotify, see that people are interested, and then they think if a couple people are interested, maybe more people are interested, and then they push me out to more people, and we can build a community where we can share and just be there for each other and try to learn and grow and evolve and hopefully raise the vibration of the world together. And that's really the biggest thing right now. The world is not, the world is the garbage fire, and we are trying to put it out. So the more we rise the vibration, maybe the more water we have available to us to put that garbage fire out. By the way, that's my opinion. It's just how I feel in general. So, also, if you want to kick a little cash my way, you can do that too. I have a Buy Me a Coffee and a Patreon. There you can purchase tarot reads, astrology reads, and soon to be a bunch more other stuff coming there, including guided meditation, audio. There'll be life coaching sessions, there'll be holistic diet stuff, all that kind of good stuff. There's going to be much more coming in the coming month to those 2 platforms. Perfect. If you want information on this and so much more, make sure you check out my Medium publication. By trade, I am a writer, so of course we're going to have a publication that goes with the podcast. And if you are into women, history, and feminism, then you need to check out my other podcast. It's called Where All the Ladies At. I really, really am passionate about shining a light on women in general and everything I do. So there is that. I think that's it for the shameless plugging and housekeeping. So we can get started with today's topic, which is the Ten of Swords. All right, so Ten of Swords. It's one of those cards. So often with swords, there's several that people see the card and they're like, what the fuck is that? And they start to freak out and they start to like panic because it's not the greatest imagery, guys. If I'm honest with you, it's kind of scary and kind of wow. What I will say before we jump into this is that I want you guys to know when I'm talking about the imagery, I'm talking about the traditional deck. Usually I'm referencing the Rider-Waite deck. And also that goes for when I'm talking about how to read it, I'm talking about the traditional way of reading reverse. And yeah, so I'm just looking at those things to kind of give us a baseline information. So we have that in our bag. So when we are reading for ourselves or our querent, we can have a more informed and deeper dive into the symbology. So If you've never seen the Ten of Swords, it's basically, here you go, picture this. A figure is lying, crumpled, face down in the dirt with 10 swords plunged into their back. With pretty brutal precision, I might say. A little overkill, you might say. But it's it's kind of a stark and raw and unapologetic image, right? You're not getting up from this. The ground beneath them is still the moment is frozen. The sky is like this black and gray, kind of, looking for your internal, landscape. This is not a paper cut. This is like a collapse. But on the horizon is a sliver of gold, right? The sunrise. Subtle but insistent, cracks open the darkness, right? The sunrise is the thing we should be paying attention to, but the swords draw our attention, right? The Ten of Swords really kind of captures this really precise spiritual, emotional moment when the ego dies. It's the gasp after betrayal, silence after a final argument, right? The numbness after the breakdown, but it's not drama for drama's sake. It's really kind of a sacred moment. The card shows us what it means to hit true bottom, right? You hit rock bottom, not to punish, but to purge, right? It may be the end of a toxic cycle. It could be the death of an illusion that you had. It could be destruction of identity you no longer fit into, right? The Ten of Swords doesn't let you turn away. But here's the thing. If you look really closely, there's no blood. There's no flailing. It was just surrender, right? The swords are still. The figure is still. And the moment kind of has this like strange atmosphere of peace, right? The card is kind of whispering a very hard truth. Sometimes we don't evolve until something breaks us open, right? But once it does, we can finally have the room to kind of rebuild something and rebuild it really real and more authentic. So whereas the card is a very scary imagery, if you really look at it, it's kind of beautiful too. I know that might sound weird, but that's really how I look at it, right? Knowing the symbology, and then as we jump into numerology, which is what we're going to cover soon, you're going to see that there's a lot of significance to this, right? Because look, 10 is more than just a number. It's the ending that really, it's an ending, right? It's a full stop at the end of a long sentence. The final breath of a chapter that had to be written. When the Ten of Swords shows up, it's kind of the current cycle is not just winding down, it's done, right? The event may feel recent or even still feel like it's going on still, but on a spiritual level, that contract is done. It's expired. You've ripped it up. It's over, right? 10 represents like a moment of reckoning, and basically it's like you were saying, that's enough. It's not punishment. It's more like punctuation, right? In the Suit of Swords, because as we talk about, it deals with the minds and thoughts and communication, right? And even like the really, really sharp edges of internal dialogue. When it's tied with the number 10, it's the completion, right? There's nothing left to analyze. No more battles to win or words to say. You've thought it to death. It's the only way to get out of it is to move forward, right? But the magic of 10 is that it folds back into 1, right? It contains that seed of the next beginning within it. So one of my favorite sayings is like, something has to end to something for something to begin. And that's what 10 really is, right? It's the death that guarantees rebirth, right? It's a paradox, but if you look at it, it's like, it can slip into the next page of your story, right? The numerological energy doesn't come with a lot of fanfare. It's pretty much the aftermath. It's the space between everything, it's the time when you're sitting there and you ask yourself, what did I just learn? Or who am I now that this is over? That's the questions that come into your mind with 10. And the 10 of Swords kind of teaches that endings are not just something we survive. There's something we're meant to alchemize. Once you face the 10, you're not who you were before. You're sharper, you're wiser, and you've been reborn. And that's why the 10 is so important. It's the completion of a story, right? Now, we can go into other things as well, where, when we are going to, we're going to talk about the element and everything. So here's the thing. It's swords, right? So been saying this the whole time. That means it's attached to the element of air. And air governs thought and logic, communication, perception, all those things. And this card is steeped in mental energy, right? Suffering doesn't come from events themselves, but from the stories we tell ourselves about them. And I think that's super important for us to really, and I'm going to repeat that. So suffering doesn't come from the events themselves. It comes from the stories we tell ourselves about them, or how we emotionalize, intellectualize, and internalize them. These are all things that are causing this to be, right? The mind can be a tool of torment or a tool, right? Or like a helpful tool. It can be both. It can be them at the same time. Really, truthfully, two things can be truthful at the same time, right? And this card really talks about how we need to own our own thoughts, and how they've really kind of turned against us. It's associated with the Gemini because it's an air sign, right? And that adds just another layer, right? Gemini kind of thrives on duality, light and shadow, truth and illusion, that kind of thing, right? It's a mutable air sign, and that brings a kind of a theme of scattered energy, mental overload, right? And that often appears when we've exhausted ourselves because, right? And we have to face a hard truth, and sometimes that causes mental overload, right? And of course, Gemini's ruling planet is Mercury. And that Mercury is, once again, perception and expression, right? He's the messenger. He's the trickster. He's the translator between what we think and what we say. Under the influence of Mercury, the Ten of Swords kind of says, it's telling us that sometimes messages cut deep. Misunderstandings can become wounds, and thoughts can really spiral out of control. But Mercury is interesting because he does hold the key to integration. Once you can finally understand the message, healing really becomes possible, but you have to find your way to understanding that message, right? It's the card itself, attached with all of its associations, is talking about, mental and emotional clarity may have to come after we've stopped trying to control the outcome. We have to listen to our inner world. Our inner voices are desperately always trying to tell us things if we're not listening. For those people that really listen to their intuition, this may not be an issue, but for those that struggle with it, the inner voice, the inner child, the inner anything is always screaming, trying to tell you, but you have to listen to it. And that's the big thing. So let's talk about how to read it. Now, we've kind of gone over the symbology, so we're going to really kind of go over the upright reading a little bit quicker. When it's upright, it's a way to finality, right? There's no sugar coating this card. It's a moment when betrayal, it's already occurred. The heartbreak has taken root, all these things. The swords and the figure's back aren't just literal. They symbolize the kind of emotional, mental wounds that we feel when we feel we've been cut to the core. Maybe you trusted the wrong person, or maybe you've pushed yourself beyond your limits and something broke. Either way, this card is talking about reckoning, I think this card, for me, and if I'm honest with you, sometimes I also read this as we did this to ourselves. We betrayed ourselves. We didn't fall in line with what we really wanted. We didn't listen to our intuition. We didn't make the choices that we knew were right for us. So I want to really caveat this by saying these swords, yes, they may come from other people, but sometimes they also come from ourselves. So that's what you have to look for, right? The thing is that the image is pretty bleak, right? But the message isn't really about being defeated. It's about surrender, right? You have to stop fighting, right? It asks you to kind of lay down, just grieve what's lost, acknowledge that the ending. You can't resist anymore. That has to go away. You have to start acceptance, right? You have to honor the pain without letting it define you. In that stillness, right? In the ashes of what was, you can take the first step towards healing. Look, the truth is, when situations like that happen, the road ahead is not going to be clear. But there's one thing that's certain. You are no longer who you were, and you can't stay in that spot anymore. You have to keep moving, you know. It's interesting. I teach kids too. I teach English in the country I live in, and one of the kids said something the other day, and they were talking about how the coolest thing they could be if they wanted to be like an ocean animal. And if they got a tattoo, that's what they would want, was a shark. And I asked, like, why a shark? And they're like, because, like, it's a great message, right? The shark, if it stops swimming, is going to die. And I was like, wow, that was pretty deep, right? And that is the thing. You have to keep swimming. If you don't keep taking that step forward after you've had this ending, this whatever it was, you're basically dying, right? It would be like if a shark just said, I'm not going to swim anymore, right? So I just thought that was really, really cool. All right, so that's kind of upright right now. So let's talk about reversed. When the Ten of Swords reverts, it has a much gentler tone, right? Maybe the worst is already passed. There's still a pain. There's still an echo of pains, right? But the reversed traditionally talks about like a fragile beginning of recovery, right? You start to rise from the wreckage. Maybe you're still shaky. Maybe you're still scared. But you have like this awareness that you've survived, right? The sun that was only just beginning to rise in the upright version is now higher in the sky. So, but I would say there's also a caution here, right? The reverse Ten of Swords can show we're gripping on the hurt, resisting change, replaying the betrayal, maybe stuck in it, right? Healing is trying to make its way in, but maybe something inside of us is keeping us like that door half shut. You know, whether that's fear, guilt, habit, right? We're clinging to something that has already fallen away. The card in this position kind of asks, what would it look like if you release the weight of the pain, right? It's really not about forgetting, because that's not good, or even pretending that it didn't happen. It's about really choosing to no longer let it direct the story. It cannot define you. The reverse Ten of Swords is really talking about a turning point when we just stop defining ourselves by our ending and start choosing what comes next, right? It's really soft. It's very powerful, though, to try to, and it's trying to invite hope back into your life, right? That's what that's trying to do. Super important. Now, we're going to dive into the more associations, right? So let's talk. The Ten of Swords aligns with energies of deep transformation and sacred release, right? That's kind of what we've been talking about. And in order to do that, there's some things that you could do. So if we're talking about crystals, crystals like black obsidian can really help, because they are very good. It's very good at protecting your energy field. It can help you cut cords. It draws emotional poison left behind, right? Another one would be smoky quartz. It kind of brings its own alchemy, right? It can transmute heavy energies and help you ground yourself so that you can move out of the sorrow into clarity. Both of these storms don't really erase the pain, but they can help you hold it with purpose, right? Herbs like sage and rosemary are both very good. Obviously, sage is spiritual sanitation. You can sage the thing, right? Rosemary is memory and truth, and it really rosemary can help you, encourage you to like remember without being consumed, right? And really to find clarity in like your emotional haze. If we're talking about the deities, Kali and Hecate could really be good. And I think that's because you have to think about fierce, transformative forces, right? And Kali is the goddess of destruction and rebirth, right? You have to destroy your false self to awaken the real one, kind of, that's her message. And Hecate, she's the goddess of crossroads, so she stands with us between what was and what will be. So kind of both of them encourage you to ask for courage and not look for the comfort, right? I think color wise, black and gold would be really nice. Black isn't really just for mourning. I know that's how we use it, but protection and power and, right, transformation. I heard some noise. Sorry, guys. Gold is emerging the dawn behind the card's horizon, right? So promise of a new day, a new self, a new cycle. And if together, you could put them together. And that kind of was a really great message of death and resurrection. I think that's really beautiful. If we're talking about how to incorporate them into your daily mindfulness, if you're trying to bring it into your daily practice, you have to allow yourself to acknowledge the pain you carry. I'm not saying wallow in it, but really witness it, honor it, and really begin the slow work of setting it down, right? I'd say in the morning, give yourself space to reflect. I always take 5 or 10 minutes, depending on how much I have, of silence. You can also use it to journal. And don't judge yourself. Don't try to fix it. Just name what it is. Because naming your pain is really the first act of reclaiming your power, right? I think if you choose to meditate, try visualizing the scene from the card. Not the swords, but the sunrise, right? Imagine the light growing stronger with every breath you take. You let it touch the parts of you that feel bruised or broken. That the sun is healing for a reason. Kind of let it remind you that you're not done. You're simply just becoming, man. That's really it, right? You can also incorporate affirmations into your day. I release what no longer serves me. That's one of my favorite ones. Because when you use affirmations, no matter what affirmation you use, they're not just words. They're spells. You're speaking them into existence. Even if you're just speaking them into your coffee, into your steps, into your breath, as you're going to the bathroom, as you're riding, the bus to work, whatever you're doing. If you say those words, whether out loud or in your head, you're putting that message out into the universe, it's basically manifesting what you are saying, right? I think also you can light a candle, right? Look, candles are great. They're symbolic containers, and you can use it as a symbolic container for your pain, your doubt, energy, your choosing, right, whatever. Watch it burn. Let the flame be the ritual that kind of says, hey, you know what? What ends tonight does not need to begin again tomorrow, right? I think if you utilize some of these practices, you may feel that the energy from the Ten of Swords and the card itself becomes so much more, right? It's a teacher, it's a companion, it's a spiritual rite of passage, right? What once pierced you can become what initiates you. But the trick is, and I will say this again, the trick is that energy that you have, you cannot wallow in it. Look, I suffer from mental health issues, right? I have depression. I wallow in the energies. I used to. But once I started, allow yourself to grieve, allow yourself to have the emotions, but you can't let it stop you, right? You can't just succumb to it. You can't just surrender. You can acknowledge, you can feel, you can name, you can move through it, you can sit with it, but you can't surrender to it. Once you do, you become like that shark that stops swimming. You're gonna die. Whether, maybe not physically, but mentally, emotionally, and unfortunately, sometimes maybe a little physically, right? Because mental and emotional affects our bodies. So don't succumb and don't surrender. All right. And that's the Ten of Swords. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you got a lot of it. You have to remember every ending holds the seed of a new beginning, right? You have to embrace the lessons. You have to release the pain. You have to step into that transformation. And that's what the Ten of Swords is saying. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you got a lot from it. If you guys have any questions or want to reach out to me, you can do that through my social media or the email for those that don't rock social media. If you want to support the podcast, as always, like, comment, share, follow, subscribe, all that stuff. If you want to kick some cash my way, you can always reach out to me at any point. You could go to my Buy Me a Coffee or my Patreon, or DM me through social. If you would like a tarot read, an astrology read, a life, a wellness coach, I do all these things. Reach out to me, let me know what you're looking for. That would be a great way to support the podcast as well, and maybe I'd have more time to do more of these. If you want more information on this and so much more, check out Medium. And as always, if you like history, women, and feminism, check out my other podcast called Where All the Ladies At. Hope to see you there too. Until next week, guys, stay curious, stay blessed, and stay safe.